So welcome to our monthly POWTS chat here. Today, you'll notice that it's a different host. So today, it'll be myself, Katie Petzel, and Josh Rowley that will be speaking. A few members of our team are at a training session at UW-Madison. So Matt and Travis are there. They're learning about microbes in wastewater. Very exciting. Hope that it brings some information to our team. But this month, we're just going to be doing kind of a general update as to things that have been going on. I'm going to speak for part of it, and then Josh will join for the rest of it. And then at that point, we'll open it up for questions. So I'm going to start to share my screen here, and hopefully this works. All right, Josh, can you see my screen?
No, I cannot.
Okay. Now can you?
Yep.
Awesome. Oh, of course, I forget to change the date. Today is not September 12th. It is October 10th. But this will be recorded and available online. So welcome to the POWTS chat. Like I said, these recordings will be available. This is a change that the department has made relatively recently. Last month, the POWTS chat was posted online, and you can see we've gotten a pretty good amount of views on that, and it's exciting. So these POWTS chats will always be posted online after the presentation is done. If you view them post-fact, we don't have any way of testing as to whether or not you viewed it. So it's not possible to get continuing ed credits for viewing it online, but these POWTS chats will be available on the DSPS YouTube channel. So it's all compartmentalized within the DSPS page, but there is a specific playlist for POWTS videos. I don't know if it's possible to get updates only to POWTS videos, but if you like and subscribe, you'll be able to get updates as to when DSPS posts things. And we don't post super often, so it won't clog your feed or anything like that. But just know that we will post these updates within a week is my goal of recording them. So they'll be available for viewing after the fact. So just an update on POWTS personnel. So we have, as you all know, been in the process of hiring 3 new people for our team here. I received an update from April, our supervisor, this morning, and the part of the process that it's in is that interviews and references have already been conducted, but we're waiting on HR for approvals and reviews of those hires that were recommended. So hopefully, in November, we'll have some bright and shiny new faces to show, and all of you will get to know the new members of our team. So just to reiterate, this map was on last month, but just a reminder to those counties or soil testers or individuals who reach out to wastewater specialists, this is kind of the temporary districts that we've assigned. So I'm taking St. Croix, Pierce, Dunn, Chippewa, Rusk, and Price counties. Matt has Taylor, Clark, Eau Claire, Pepin, Buffalo, Trempealeau, and Jackson. And Travis has taken La Crosse and Monroe. Once the new hire for the field position is on, these districts will most likely be reoriented, and we'll present that orientation to you on the POWTS chat, and additionally the map will be updated on our website. But until we know who that person is, we can't know how the most efficient orientation of the districts will be. So in addition to that update, I also have kind of a general update that I'm actually pretty excited to present about. So there's been some major changes coming from the credentialing department at DSPS. So we've long heard about the wait times and the difficulty that comes with gaining a credential in Wisconsin. And as a result of that, or maybe it was already in the works, I'm not part of credentialing, so I don't know. They've made a few changes to the credentialing department. One of those changes is a new partnership with a company called Pearson VUE. So Pearson VUE is a independent organization that proctors exams for a number of states and private organizations, the federal government, all kinds of things, and they run many thousands of sites across the United States and across the world. And so DSPS has partnered with them to provide an additional 54 testing sites within Wisconsin. So it used to be, or it still is, but soon that will change, that there were only a few sites throughout the state where exams could be taken. And most of them were in the southern part of the state. So me being from Superior, I had to travel quite a long ways to take my exams. And the idea is that with these new sites, there'll be additional days and times, and people won't have to travel as far or plan as far in advance for their exams. So I'm very excited for this at the prospect that people will be more quickly able to take their exams and in a place that is more efficient for them travel-wise. So regardless of these additional Pearson VUE sites, there won't be any reduction in state-run exam slots. So all of the sites and times that you're familiar with in the past will still be available. There'll still be those state-run exams. This more broadly affects most exams that don't have a hands-on portion, but because the CST credential has that hands-on portion with the monolith and the soil texturing and things like that, the CST exam will still be required to be at a state-run exam. This change is expected to come online in the first quarter of 2024, and there will be a small additional administrative fee for the Pearson VUE sites just because they are a private company, as far as I know. So in addition to those additional dates that were added or will be added for the Pearson VUE sites, there's also been additional dates added this year for DSPS hosted exams. So 4 of those dates have been added for 2023. One of them is tomorrow. So if you wanted to switch your exam to tomorrow, I don't think it's possible. But anyway, 3 new dates have been added in the middle of December in DeForest. So those are highlighted on this slide. They're the 19th, 20th, and 21st. And DSPS is currently notifying people who are already signed up to offer those new slots. But if you have an exam coming up next year in 2024 and you haven't been notified, but you would like to change your exam to one of the earlier dates, you're welcome to do that. There's a very long URL for it, but I shortened it here to a bit.ly exam change, and that should pull up the exam change request form if you wish to change your exam date to one that is closer by. It's not a guarantee by any means that you'll get those dates, but it is available there to request that change. So those are the updates that I have for credentialing. Hopefully timelines are accelerated and we can get more people through their trades exams. It's been made known that the amount of applicants and the number of people entering the trades in Wisconsin is at a historic high. So hopefully we can better serve our credential holders. I also have an update about the Wisconsin Fund. So a bit of a change has been made since last month. And the Wisconsin Fund, the application period is open, and Brad is on the call, so he can speak a little bit more if we have questions about this coming up. 2 funding cycles are anticipated to be a part of this one application period. Each of those cycles is $840,000. So do the math, it's quite a large amount that could be funded for these projects. The income and the system age requirements remain unchanged, and those applications, if counties have been accumulating them already, can be submitted to DSPS. The forms are on the DSPS website. They remain unchanged, and any questions should be directed to that email address. So DSPS Fiscal Wisconsin Fund at wisconsin.gov. They can best help people with those kinds of questions. It's expected that there should soon be an announcement from the Secretary's office about the Wisconsin Fund. So as far as I'm aware, this might be the first time that it's been announced that the application period is open. Brad, do you have any additional comments on the Wisconsin Fund?
Yeah, nothing right now that you haven't already mentioned. We are restricted based on the statutes and the language that came out because the program sunsets in June 2025. We do plan on making changes in the future so that we can have 2 funding cycles and not rush everybody into one. But that would be pending funding in the budget. It's kind of a chicken and egg sort of thing. So if you have any questions about why we have to combine 2 years into one, just give me a call directly and I'd be happy to have that conversation with you. But otherwise, yeah, we can begin receiving those. You can collect those applications and start sending those in to us. The last time that we did this, we were able to make full awards. We didn't have to prorate anything. So if you have people out there that qualify for this program, please do so. And we certainly don't know, what the future of this program is. It's been a target. The industry lobbies to bring it back, but for now, it's here for at least one more cycle. And if it gets included in another budget, we certainly can't foresee that right now. So whatever happens, but take advantage of the program while it's available. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. And if you guys have any questions, you can drop them in the chat too at any time. All right, so moving on to harp on a broken record, but it comes up all the time, is complaints. The department's legal team is following up, and I just wanted to reiterate that if no complaint is filed, DSPS doesn't have any record of the infraction, and if there's no record of it, there's no enforcement. And the more complaints that are received against an individual, there's a possibility of a steeper punishment. And I don't want anyone to think that this is the department coming at someone or trying to get someone, but just know that if, as a county, you have someone that you've had 10 actions that you've taken against in the past year, but none of them have been reported to DSPS, we don't know about that, or our legal team doesn't know about that. So DSPS has been producing a quarterly update recently, and as a part of that handout, that booklet that they've been creating, there are notes in there about actions the department has taken. So I just took a select few of those actions regarding plumbing work, so you can see that the department is following up and they are taking action against people who are both unlicensed and licensed individuals that are doing things that are not per the requirements of the state. All right, something that's come up again a lot this month. I've gotten many calls about this, so I thought it would be important to include it, because if I get questions, that means everyone else gets questions. So dog kennels, what are dog kennels and how do we size them? So DSPS, or I don't have recommendations on the kennel portion of the POWTS or the holding tank or whatever you're doing with that wastewater. And that's because dog kennels and dog waste is considered an industrial wastewater. And that is the purview of the DNR. So that part of the system, I don't have recommendations on. Regarding the employees and the domestic wastewater, you just use the appendix, or I guess as you see fit, if you have metered flows or something like that. If there is concurrence, so there's commingled wastewater, then a sanitary permit is issued on this, and it, the county would see it as well. It's domestic and industrial. But if the system is solely for the industrial wastewater, so for example, just the floor drains in the dog kennel portion, then that's just a DNR system. And then I have that little picture there of that dog. My dog is sitting on my feet right now, so I guess I can say that I have an ideal work environment here. So, all right, and then on to the meat and potatoes of my portion of the presentation. So the plumbing code update. I have a picture here of Secretary Harris with some of the individuals in the plumbing industry signing the new plumbing code into effect. So the new plumbing code update took effect October 1st. So we're 10 days into it. It's the first update that has been undertaken to the plumbing code since 2009, which is quite a while if you think about it. And the exams will be updated starting November 1st. So for the exam periods of this month, it'll be the old code. Starting in November, it'll be the new code. DSPS POWTS has already been reviewing our exams. I believe the process is done or very close to completion to ensure any updates to the POWTS exams are completed and would be in agreement with the new general plumbing code. Additional training will be provided by the department. I don't have a link to that right now, but I'm sure it will be announced publicly when it is done. And then I just wanted to say that only select changes will be discussed today. The entirety of the plumbing code is very large and there are really significant updates. Specifically, they said there are updates regarding biological control options for healthcare facilities, adopting nationally recognized standards for water reuse, energy efficiency, tankless water heaters, and things like that. I'm not going to discuss those today because they don't pertain so much to what we're doing in POWTS. I made a shortened version of the link to that. The department has put together a full list of changes that you can reference. So I made that short link there, bit.ly plumbing code changes, and it'll pull up the link to the document that has all of the track changes for the plumbing code. So you can see there's tons of them, but most of them don't pertain to POWTS. So we're going to go through the select few today, and we'll talk about it more in the future about, as things come up and we find out what their impact is on POWTS. So first things first, on all these slides, I have the old code and the new code pulled up, and we'll just talk about a little bit of the changes here. So a major change was made to the activities that can be undertaken by a restricted service plumber. So the old code, you can see it stops at D. There's been a significant addition of activities for restricted service. So doing reclaimed water systems not located within the building's foundation, stormwater use systems not located within the foundation, wastewater treatment devices not located within the building's foundation, manufactured home, community system, sanitary, all of that stuff. So the way it appears to me is restricted service activities have been just greatly expanded as to what that type of plumber can do outside of the foundation of a building. All right. There's been a slight change to the wording for the application requirements for restricted service journeyman. So it used to say at least 1,000 hours of plumbing related work experience as a restricted learner, registered learner, restricted service. And the new language here is completed one continuous year of plumbing related work experience, not consisting of not less than 1,000 hours. So that's a change. And if there are folks here that are learners or they're starting their journey into this path, just reference that and make sure when you go to apply that you're meeting that new requirement. All right, frost protection. There's been a slight change to the language here for frost protection. So it used to say frost protection requirements do not apply to building sewers or private interceptor mains installed to serve summer use public facilities. And they changed that to say that are not open during the period of November 15th to March 15th, and which are not places of employment. So that's a change. It kind of buttons down what is meant by summer and things like that. All right, private interceptor mains. There's been a slight change to this. There is additional language added to the private interceptor main code section. So they added a line that states an easement or agreement for maintenance and repairs shall be recorded with the Register of Deeds no later than 90 days after installation. So that's in addition to subsection 2 there, where it specifies that regarding buildings that are located on one property, but this appears to be a slightly broader language. Sanitary dump stations, there's been a change to what they can accept. So the old code specified certain things, and the non-potable water supply. The new code adds that sanitary dump stations can receive domestic waste and domestic wastewater from camping unit transfer tanks and RV transfer tanks, in addition to what they could previously accept. And also adds the requirement that the non-potable water supply for the washdown of the drain shall be located at least 50 feet from a potable water supply, unless there is a variance. So that specification was added. Grease interceptors. I'm going to be intentionally vague, I guess, on grease interceptors, as there is some discussion between DSPS POWTS and DSPS General Plumbing about the interpretation of the grease interceptor code, and maybe Brad has gotten clarification on this. But just to speak broadly about grease interceptors, the language requiring an exterior grease interceptor was removed, so it's just more general now. Buildings shall be provided with grease interceptors, not necessarily exterior. And there was also a requirement added that exterior grease interceptors shall have at least 2 compartments. So that's a change that was not required in the previous code section about grease interceptors. And I don't know, Brad, do you want to speak more on grease interceptors? Otherwise, we can talk more about it next month when we have things buttoned down a bit.
Yeah, that's fine. There was one extra section that we had a lot of discussion about, that grease interceptors will be required to provide sufficient treatment to remove all of the fats, oils, greases necessary to meet the performance requirement of our code, and that is the 30 standard, or I'll have to look it up, but yeah.
So what that means, we'll know at a later date. So, all right. So that's it. That's what I have for the plumbing code update. The actual document tracking the changes is just pages and pages and pages long. So it's a very abridged version of that. And I'd also like to touch on a little bit, because we've gotten some questions about it this month. Old experimental systems, what are they? What are we doing with them? So these old experimental systems, the experiments that were taken underway primarily by the small scale waste management project in the 70s and 80s, they're no longer active. So the experiment is no longer active. They were typically installed in like the late 80s. And that's why we're seeing the end of their life now. It's about 40 years, well, approaching 40 years on from when they were installed. So their lifespan is coming up. And as a result of the experiments no longer being active, any change or modification means that the whole system must meet current code. So I have an example here of a situation where a tank is collapsed and it requires replacement. So what do we do in a situation where the tank is collapsed and requires replacement? The experimental system was installed with pretreatment and 1 foot of separation. So that's how that experiment was written at that time in this hypothetical situation. So what do we do about that? So the system then must be altered to meet the required separation of the code. So typically 3 feet or 2 feet with pretreatment. So the system would need to be more than likely significantly altered to meet the current code. So you can't just replace the tank, I guess is what I'm getting at. The whole system has to be up to current code. But what about a different style of old experimental system? Because they range in what they were and how experimental, I guess, they were and how well they fit our current code. So what about a system where the tank is collapsed and it requires replacement, but that system that was installed was experimental as a gravity upgrade? Well, gravity upgrades are now component manual reviews, and as long as that system is evaluated against the current code and it meets the requirements of the current code, then that tank replacement and the soil absorption and dispersal portion of it can be permitted as an ISD. If it's an ISD, if it doesn't completely meet the component manual for the upgrade, or a component manual possibly, as gravity upgrades are not particularly complex. So, and there's a range of what is required for that. And if you have an old experimental system that is in need of change or modification, just reach out to your local wastewater specialist, plan reviewer, and we'll help guide you through what the system is and whether and what would be required of it. All right, so here is a QR code. If you have questions, we're going to open it up later. I'm not done yet. Josh is going to come on, but we'll return to this slide for question and answer if we have time at the end. So I will turn it over to Josh.
We will have plenty of time. I've only got a couple things here that I want to address. Bear with me a second here. Things we're seeing with plans that are coming in. Here we go. So the first area I want to talk about is tested areas on soil tests. The test on the left, inadequate. It's a straight line. It's not delineating the area where the system is going to be. The area on the right, obviously much better. Your pits are far enough apart. System will easily fit in between the areas there. If we get a design coming in with a soil test on the left, we are asking for additional borings. So we've been rejecting those. It's happening more times than a person would realize. And it's not always new soil testers. So it's just something to keep an eye on when you guys are reviewing soil tests. We've had a lot of questions coming in on C33 sand. We get pictures and they want our opinion. This does not replace a sieve analysis, but if you carry a jar with you and you have the water, this will give you a quick test to see how many fines are in there. It's a very simple test. Do not, if you're pulling a sand sample, don't just pull it from the windblown portion of the windblown side. Take it from within the pile so it's more representative, or mix it with a shovel or your hands even to get a representative sample. You'd start with, as it says here, 2 inches of sand in a glass quart jar. It's mathematical, so it's important that you get 2 inches. If you go with 2.5 inches and end up with an 1/8 inch of fines, your ratio is going to be off a little bit. So try to be concise. We've got people in the field that actually just always have a jar and water with, so they can just grab a quick hand sample when they're out, make sure everything's good. I'd recommend it, especially if you guys are in areas where you've got questionable sand or you question the site where the sand has been delivered from. So something good to know. Definitely pay attention to your sand that you're seeing going in for the mounds. Another thing we're seeing more and more of is tank modifications. Tank modification requires approval from the tank manufacturer unless the approval from DSPS has that included, which I am not aware of any modifications to tanks that are already pre-approved. So in this example, you have a tank here where your standard inlet and outlet are. They've modified this tank to turn into a surge tank. So it's going to have a bottom outlet from the surge tank going to a pump tank. This modification on the surge tank would have to be approved, and the lower inlet on the pump tank would have to be approved. Both of those would come from the tank manufacturer. So if you're seeing anything weird on designs where they're utilizing surge tanks, we do see them also with suction lines on holding tanks when they're not meeting the 25-foot setback. They'll use suction lines and they want to come out of the bottom of the tank as opposed to coming in and 90ing down from the outlet. So Just something to keep in mind if you guys are seeing modified tanks and have questions. If your designer or plumber doesn't know, feel free to reach out to me or any of our staff. Everybody's very proficient in finding out, if these modifications have been approved or not. A few more issues we're seeing. I got a call this week where there's a zoning violation on a property and the county will not issue a sanitary permit. A zoning violation doesn't give the county the authority to deny or hold up a sanitary permit. You could have a zoning violation, you still have to issue the sanitary permits. In the case that I was called about, it's actually a failed system and they're trying to get a new system put in before the weather breaks here for the winter. And they're not sure they're going to get it to happen or not. So it could certainly snowball and cause a much larger issue. Another thing we like to do when you guys are out doing your inspections, we beat this over and over again, and this is not to cause an uproar. Simply, when you're out doing your POWTS inspection, the visible soils you see too, just take a look at them. Grab a handful of material. Talk to your guys when they're out there. We're not asking at this point for anything more than just take a look and make sure everything that it just matches what you're seeing on your soil test. Not asking to create more work, doesn't take any more time. Just to make sure everything matches. We're seeing situations too where a soil test comes in and it's the wrong soil test for the site. Elevations aren't lining up with designs. Legal descriptions are wrong. Another issue we're seeing, we've had a lot of increase in errors in plans. It's that time of year where everybody is behind the 8 ball. They're rushing to get plans out. Just pay close attention when you're reviewing your plans. We're seeing them on cell widths, lateral spacing. Those are 2 big areas we're seeing them. So it's just something to be aware of. Even your real proficient submitters, they do make mistakes too. People take for granted that, you've got great submitters. They never make mistakes. Normally they don't. So, but just keep an eye out, make sure that the numbers all match when you guys are reviewing plans, that are assigned to your office. You're certainly welcome to, look at our plans too. We also make mistakes just like anybody else does. So, if you're looking at a state plan that has an error, or if you're not understanding how something was permitted, reach out again. Don't just discount it. It's important to us that you guys understand all aspects of our approval process too. So it just makes everything go smoother if we're all on the same page. So, and that's kind of all I have. We're going to have a couple other issues next month we're going to bring up. We just want a little more back information and better examples for you guys on a couple topics we were going to touch on today, but those topics today would have rolled into a lot of questions that we want solid answers for. So nobody has to wait a month for answers. At this point, we can jump back to Katie's Q&A code if you guys want to do that. You can also use the POWTS chat if you wanted to use that as opposed to submitting questions. It's up to you guys how you want to handle that.
Yep. All right. So before we get back into that, I want to just quickly touch base on a situation that that I had this month regarding C33 sand, right? So Josh talked about a jar test and a sieve analysis and things like that. But I just want to make it clear to people that sometimes a sieve analysis or a gradation test it's just not enough, especially if the material is coming from a source that could contain contaminants in it that could affect the functionality of the POWTS. Most situations that we see regarding ASTM C33 fine aggregate, it's coming from a natural source. It's mined out of the ground. But I just wanted to bring a situation here that I received from a county in my district where they received this material that's pictured here to be used as ASTM C33 sand. And to the best of or fine aggregate, sorry, not sand. To the best of their knowledge, there's no source for this material in their area. And they had last year an individual try to use a material very similar, probably the same, it's a little bit of conjecture here, for a system, and they said it was reclaimed asphalt. So you can imagine they had a gradation test done, and this material passes the gradation test. But I just like to reiterate that the sieve analysis and the jar test and things like that are not, it's not the full scope of the ASTM C33 spec. There's a number of other tests. So if you come across materials like this, know that a gradation test is not the end all be all as to whether or not something meets the ASTM C33 fine aggregate standard. So, you know, they haven't provided additional tests as to whether or not this meets that standard, but you can think about how a material such as this might affect a POWTS. Will the biological activity be the same in a, you know, a hydrocarbon based material? Will it leach deleterious materials into the groundwater? What will happen here? And this county's been very good about being strong about this, but just know that a simple sieve analysis sometimes is not all that would be required for ASTM sand. All right. So after my little high horse there, I'm going to open up here a Q&A, and hopefully this works. So the way that Cece used to do it, she used an application called Mentimeter, but I don't have permission to use it on my state computer. So we're going to try this through a Microsoft Forms application. So what you have to do is scan the QR code, and it should open up a simple form that just says POWTS Chat October Q&A questions. And you can enter in your questions there, and we will respond to them to the best of our knowledge. Otherwise, you can just drop them in the chat. This way, I believe, is anonymous. So if you have a question that you don't want your name tied to, which there's no shame here. We ask all kinds of questions all the time. You should hear the questions that the state employees ask of each other. Feel free to ask. Otherwise, you can drop them in the chat and we'll answer them from there. So I'm gonna, I guess I don't know how to see the chat right now, but I saw there was a question in the chat from Maria regarding the necessity of grease interceptors, if it's just for commercial applications. And I will, well, I have the QR code open. But Josh, do you want to take that question? Otherwise, the change to the grease interceptor code is still, we're still trying to figure out what exactly it means. But Josh and Brad, if you have input on that one.
I can pipe in here. So the grease interceptors are referencing commercial establishments. Now, if there was some reason any other facility would be producing effluent that could be high in FOGs, that would be a situation where a grease interceptor would be needed, because at that point they're not producing domestic strength waste. So that's kind of your trigger there. It's assumed they're going to be commercial systems predominantly. I'm sure there's residential systems out there that are producing high strength waste. I'm just not aware of any. So that would almost be anything other than a commercial system would be a case by case basis, if that helps you. If you run into a situation where you question it, certainly feel free to ask us. You can give us a call anytime and we'll try and work through it with you. Does that help you at all, Maria? And we're waiting for questions to pour in. I'll touch on continuing ed credits too quickly. I review all the requests for continuing education credits. We have kind of cracked down on, we don't just pass out credits. When we get applications in requesting credits, the supporting documents need to support the credits you're asking for. So if you're asking for 4 hours of credit for soil testers, there needs to be 4 hours of 4 hours of information for soil testers. In the past, the soil tester credits were just kind of handed out. If half of a session dealt with soils, a 4-hour session, soil testers maybe get 4 hours, POWTS people would get 4 hours. That's not really the case anymore. It's got to be more specific, and that'll help, ensure that training the soil testers are getting is more specific. Just like any of the POWTS people, if you're going for credits, personally, I've been to a lot of classes where when you get done, you're like, man, I can't believe I just got 4 credits for what I sat through, or 6 credits or 2 credits. So we want to make sure the credits that people are getting actually are beneficial rather than just sitting through mundane stuff.
Thank you, Josh. All right, so either my QR code isn't working or we did a really great job today of presenting our information. So I guess we'll okay, here's a question. All right, let me see if I can, I'm learning how to do this here. Okay. Oh no, why am I not? Okay. It works so much better the way Cece did it with Mentimeter, but I think she had to use her personal computer for that. Okay. So here's the question. Issuing permit for campground, bathhouse, and TV dump station. Anything specific the permit needs to account for on the dump station? Plan to reference. I guess I can't see the whole question. So maybe this system is not a good system and we won't do it next time here. So I guess I don't know the full question. So
I'll try to answer what I'm guessing here. So if you have a permit for a campground and RV dump station, the important thing, number one, you're gonna have high strength waste. Number two, you need to make sure there's surge capacity, especially with the plumbing code changes that are allowing, if a septic truck were to drive through and pump out all the RV holding tanks, or transfer tanks, that 2,000-3,000 gallon truck can now dump in that RV dump station. There needs to be language that either, I don't want to say prohibits, but there needs to be enough surge capacity so that system can handle the waste. Otherwise, you're basically going to be washing untreated effluent right through the system, to the drain field. So it's an area that needs to be looked at a little bit closer with the new language. Anybody that has review authority on these, you can certainly reach out to me. I'd happily walk through any of those with you. But again, it's important that there's enough surge capacity, so it's not pushing the additional waste right through the system, if that helps.
thank you, Josh. So maybe this is another one for Josh, because it's regarding continuing ed resources. Josh, do you know of any trainings for utility contractors or where folks could find a list of resources for specific continuing ed credits for individual credentials?
I know there's a number of online courses that I've approved. I would assume the DSPS website would have that listing. I don't have an address off the top of my head, but it's certainly something we can circle back to next month. As far as a list of online courses, otherwise you would just have to search for, depending on what your credential is, Wisconsin online continuing education course for whatever your license may be. I know there's a lot of opportunity out there. I've approved quite a few things too, so.
Okay, so we got another question about continuing ed. Will there be more opportunities for continuing ed, especially since once a month may not always work out for some people? And I'd say yes, the department, I'll speak specifically for DSPS POWTS. We have every intention of providing more opportunities for continuing education credits, both through DSPS hosted events and through attendance of DSPS staff at other people's events. Personally, myself and Matt Jansen have every intention of continuing the training that was held at UW Stevens Point's Tree Haven facility this winter. It's a wonderful 2-day plus a field day course that's not specifically tailored at novice soil testers, but is a wonderful preparation for the soil tester exam. So that will be available. In addition, we've talked pretty extensively about providing additional continuing ed opportunities, specifically regarding like pretreatment products and pressure distribution and things like that. But if you guys could see the amount of plan reviews that we have in the queue right now, you would understand why it hasn't happened this fall. We have a lot of plan reviews and we're short on staff. So it just hasn't happened this fall as we had hoped, but hopefully by this time next month, we'll have 3 additional staff and some of that burden will be spread out a bit more so that DSPS can just do more training. If you want to send me an email message with what you would like continuing ed topics to be, or if you have something that you think would be a great deep dive for next month or for further dates, that would be just awesome. We're always trying to solicit topics for POWTS chat or for other continuing ed that we could do. In December, we do have a special guest that is planned for POWTS chat. The assistant state soil scientist from NRCS has agreed to come on and speak about soil survey and all the things that they've done, what's going on with the soil survey right now, how it was initially done, how to read some of the reports and things like that to get better use of the information that they present. Now, that'll only happen, of course, if the federal government is funded at that time. So that's pending funding for them. I have a little bit of concern about that, but that's beside the point. So that's that. There will be more opportunities. We just don't have them currently lined up. And if you are on our listserv, which you would know because you would have received Septic Smart Week email blast a few weeks ago, we will send out continuing ed opportunities through that form when they are available, and we have them available, and the signups will be on Bookwen, just like for this. So
another area we've talked about having some additional training. Some of it we can even do during the POWTS chat if anybody's interested. Even just simple plan review. There's been a high turnover on office staff. If we can do it as a group setting, I can do it as a one-on-one for plan review. We can also do POWTS design work with anybody. If you know how to design a POWTS, it makes it a lot easier to review a POWTS. And we'd be happy to either do those in group settings. We can do a crash course during a POWTS chat. We can look at holding, covering these topics during our in-person training sessions. So any feedback from people that are attending today as far as those topics go too, please let us know what you'd like to do. If it's of interest, if it's not of interest.
All right. Well, thank you guys. If there are no further questions, feel free to log out in the chat, same way that you logged in, name and credential. That's the only way that you can get credit for this. I'm going to stop the recording here.